This weekend, Florida's Space Coast is poised to make history. At least two major rockets, one from SpaceX and one from Blue Origin, are scheduled to launch from the sands of eastern Florida, and with them they are expected to shatter the annual regional launch record. For decades, the region has been a hub of rocketry and space ambition. Now, the sheer volume of liftoffs in a single year may well push it into a new stratosphere. It's a milestone not just for the companies involved, but for Florida's enduring role in space. Florida's space moment, setting the stage. For over half a century, the stretch of coastline around Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center has been synonymous with rocket launches. From early Cold War military tests to the Apollo era, the Space Shuttle program, and today's booming commercial spaceflight. Now, thanks to a wave of launch activity from companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin, the region is on track to record its highest number of internal launches ever in a calendar year. Reports indicate that with an upcoming pair of launches this weekend, the tally will overtake last year's benchmark and quite possibly do so well ahead of schedule, with some sources estimating that the mark will be broken a full 53 days earlier than the previous year. That matters not only as a statistic, but as a sign of the times. Commercial spaceflight is no longer a novelty, but an industrial rhythm here. What's happening this weekend? The key players and missions. SpaceX has been nothing short of prolific. The company's record-setting pace this year is being tracked globally. For example, they achieved 139 missions in 2025 alone, a new company record. From Florida, many of these originate from launch pads at KSC and the adjacent Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. One of the scheduled launches this weekend is a Falcon 9 carrying an entire batch of satellites from Florida, placing yet another marker in the event log. Meanwhile, Blue Origin is also making its push. The company's heavy-lift rocket, the New Glenn, among other forthcoming missions, highlights how even newer entrants are making their mark in Florida's launch belt. The expected Blue Origin liftoff this weekend contributes to the count of regional launches, helping to push the aggregate total toward record-breaking territory. Why this matters: commercial spaceflight and regional impact. The surge in launches isn't simply about hitting a numeric target. It reveals several deeper trends. Scale and cadence. In years past, launch activity from Florida was dominated by large, government-driven programs with fewer but more monumental launches. Now we see many more launches, often commercial, often smaller payloads, more frequent. For example, the launch schedule reveals a string of closely spaced missions, including ones planned at short intervals. Regional economic and industrial benefits. More launches mean more jobs, more supply chain activity, more tourism, viewers come to watch launches, and more visibility. The Space Coast region sees a multiplier effect from a thriving launch ecosystem. Strategic signaling. A high count of liftoffs underscores Florida's ongoing relevance in the national and international space launch market. It signals to investors, to other space companies, and to governments that Florida remains a vibrant access point to orbit. Infrastructure and reuse in action. Many launches are now using reusable first-stage rockets, especially SpaceX's Falcon 9. This reflects the evolution of launch economics, and having so many launches implies the reuse cycles are working. Competitive dynamics among launch providers. The fact that both SpaceX and Blue Origin, among others, are launching reinforces a competitive commercial landscape in which Florida plays a central role. The record and the numbers. What is exactly being broken? What is the record here? Sources indicate that the annual count of launches from Florida's Space Coast region, Cape Canaveral, KSC area, is already ahead of schedule. And this weekend's launches will push the total past the previous high watermark. Specifically, one tweet from Florida Today noted, "The record-breaking 94th annual launch from Florida's Space Coast is scheduled for Saturday, a full 53 days ahead of last year's pace." That suggests that if the region achieves its 94th launch or beyond, it will mark a new high. The use of the word annual suggests the count is for the full year, but hitting that number early implies the pace is accelerated. Thus, the record isn't just number of launches, but the speed at which that number is being reached, and the volume relative to past years. What enables this surge? Factors behind the increase. lower-cost launches and satellite demand. Miniaturization of satellites, the growth of mega-constellations, for example for broadband, and commercial launch demand have increased the number of payloads needing orbit. Reusable launch vehicles. Systems like Falcon 9's reusable first stage reduce cost and turnaround time, increasing how often launches can happen. Multiple launch providers. With more companies operating from Florida, SpaceX, Blue Origin, possibly others, the throughput increases. Dedicated facilities and expansions. Florida's space infrastructure, including multiple pads, range support, and logistics, has matured to support higher cadence. Regulatory and market alignment. The regulatory environment, FAA licensing, NASA partnerships, etc., have matured to allow faster mission buildup and launch. Strategic scheduling and campaign launches. Companies often cluster launches or schedule them in close succession, enabling the regional count to climb rapidly. Challenges and caveats. What could slow things down? While the record is within reach, there are factors that could complicate or delay the milestone. Weather and range conflicts. Florida launches are subject to hurricanes, thunderstorms, winds, and range scheduling constraints, any of which can drag liftoffs. Technical scrubs and delays. Even the best planned missions may be scrubbed due to technical anomalies. Frequent launches increase the risk of such disruptions. Payload and landing issues. With so many launches, payload readiness, booster refurbishment, logistics, and integration all must be tightly managed. Bottlenecks can emerge. Public or stakeholder perception. High launch numbers are impressive, but any high-profile failure could dampen momentum or invite increased regulatory scrutiny.
Implications for the future. What this means beyond the moment. The fact this record is being set now suggests that the Space Coast region may be entering a new era of launch factory status rather than legacy flagship missions only. Some implications. Normalization of frequent launches. Instead of special events, launches may become routine, akin to airline flights from a major airport rather than once-in-a-while missions. Incentive for infrastructure investment. With higher cadence, the regional ecosystem may see increased investment in pads, telemetry, tracking, support services, viewership facilities, tours, and tourism. Global competitiveness. Florida may solidify its lead among U.S. launch sites. That may attract additional international business, satellites from around the globe seeking launches from the U.S. East Coast. Environmental and regulatory dimension. More launches means more scrutiny around range usage, launch window conflicts, noise, coastal impact, and space traffic and space debris issues. The industry may need to evolve in those areas. Market evolution. The fact that companies like Blue Origin are launching alongside SpaceX accelerates the competitive landscape for satellite launches, rideshare missions, human spaceflight, lunar missions, etc. Regional and community effects around the Florida Space Coast. The Space Coast, around Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach, Titusville, etc., is not just a launch site, it's a living community. With the ramp-up in launches, the local effects are tangible. Tourism boost. Launch viewings attract spectators. Beachfront and Riverview beaches fill with launch watchers, increasing demand for hospitality, dining, lodging. Job creation. Launch operations, pad refurbishment, payload integration, tracking, communications, logistics, hospitality all add jobs. Education and STEM inspiration. Higher visibility of launches inspires local schools, universities, and youth programs, reinforcing Florida's role as a gateway to space. Real estate and development pressure. As more people visit or relocate to participate in the space economy, local infrastructure, such as roads, broadband, and services, may see increased demand. Cultural identity. The region's identity, where rockets fly, becomes stronger. For residents, frequent liftoffs may become part of the rhythm of life. Key launch sites and viewing considerations. When discussing Florida launches, certain locations are key. The Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Space Force Station together host many of the major pads and facilities. Viewing spots such as